Welcome back. Always a delight when we have Megan Barth with us. She leaps tall buildings. She outruns, well, liberals, and she never has an opinion about anything.
Check.
But we have her on anyway.
That's right. I don't know why, but you keep calling me, so I answer the phone.
How are you? Good to see you. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Perry. How are you?
Good. Doing well. Hey, the president wants to suspend the security clearance of employees at the law firm that gave us basically the Russia hoax. Now, I understand that has to go through the DOJ office to happen. I guess my question to you, do you know what security clearance these people have? What do they have access to that we don't have access to?
That's a great question. I wish I did know because, you know, a few years ago when Eric Swalwell was having an affair with a Chinese spy named Fang Fang, it was revealed that not many people have security clearance that actually have access to some confidential information and documents. Security clearance was basically null and void for a very long time, specifically under the Obama and then the following Biden administration after the Trump administration. So I'm not really sure what security clearance these lawyers had, but I think that there needs to be a complete, and this is what Trump is doing, a complete revamp of access to the federal government as well as within the federal government. And all of the NGOs, as your prior guest was saying, that have literally stripped the taxpayers of billions, if not trillions of dollars for their own personal gain.
All right. I'm just curious because, you know, he's taking security clearance away from a lot of people, and then I didn't know it would go down as low as a law firm.
Yeah, it seems like they were like handing out security clearance specifically to Democrat operatives like they were, you know, the Pez and Pez dispensers. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and then this was part of the weaponized government under the Obama and the Obama administration, but also the Biden administration, which was basically one and the same.
All right. What's your 30,000-foot view of what Doge has uncovered lately?
Oh, well, I just hope they keep going. You know, I really, this is exactly what the taxpayers needed, was not only transparency, but where in the heck is all of the trillions of dollars of our money going? And it certainly wasn't going to roads, and it certainly wasn't going to infrastructure or bridges, what have you. It certainly wasn't, you know, going to the very people like our veterans and our homeless population that needed it. It was going into the coffers of former Obama administration, Obama administration officials, as well as those with ties to the Democrat Party at large. You know, one of the largest grants, which was granted just a few days before Trump took office, was to a quote-unquote climate fund that was literally kind of just built out of nothing just days before the grant was issued. And what the 1099s, or the 990s show is not much is known where $20 billion granted to this one climate action fund went. There's really no record of it. And so what we've witnessed specifically in, you know, the climate scam that we've been living under for decades, the illegal immigration human trafficking operation that Biden undertook, and that was a human trafficking operation. This wasn't a refugee resettlement program. And you know that because there's nearly, 100,000 kids that are just simply missing. And so trillions of dollars went into the climate scam, as combined with the human trafficking operation, refugee resettlement program, the illegal immigration, open borders, and no one can trace that money. But what we do know is that Stacey Abrams, for example, under the climate scam, you know, she was part of this new nonprofit. And this is why the Democrats are having an apoplectic meltdown. This isn't about saving democracy. This is about saving their own behinds, because the amount of corruption and graft and fraud that can be associated with this money laundering scheme that literally went to Democrat operatives, former Democratic officials, et cetera, has enriched their own pocketbooks. And also, I would surmise that it also went to funding mass protests, not only, and of course, the leftist protests that we saw during George Floyd, et cetera, these organic grassroots, protests, which were nothing but they were taxpayer funded. We were literally funding our own demise and our own destruction of our cities. But then you also trace the money abroad, internationally, and they were overthrowing governments all over the world.
So, of course, the president mentioned the Stacey Abrams connection during that $2 or $20 billion climate change scam. So that's clearly out there. And as Elon Musk continues to uncover the fraud and the misspending and everything else, sooner or later, they got to track the kickbacks. Do you think they will?
That's what has to happen, because if people don't go to jail, there will be no accountability, and then the graft, corruption, and fraud will continue. And this is what I've always called for. We've watched, the Republicans of yore, write a sternly worded letter, have multiple meetings, and nothing ever happens to the perpetrators. It all just gets forgotten, or they get a slap on the wrist, or they get censured, whatever that means. It's really nothing. So if there was a crime, and it certainly smells and looks like a crime, then there needs to be consequences, and people need to suffer those consequences, and it needs to be on public display and public blast.
I'm trying to figure out how to ask the question, but it seems to me there are three people. They probably won't go to jail, but they need to be stripped of their reputation. James Comey, Dr. Fauci, and Adam Schiff. Do you think it'll ever happen?
I do hope so. I was just having a conversation last night with a gentleman who lives in D.C., and he was specifically mentioning Dr. Fauci, and what Dr. Fauci did to this country is unconscionable. We all, if you recall, Perry, I was in the vaccine industry and the sterilization industry, the medical pharmaceutical industry for 23 years before I really started getting into politics. And, I was watching this whole PSYOP, and that's exactly what it was a psychological operation unfold. And I was watching it in horror, quite frankly. And people like me and the other conspiracy theorists were right. This was not a pandemic. What was more deadly in this pandemic was the quote unquote Fauci cure. Specifically the forced injection of an experimental vaccine, an mRNA vaccine, into everybody. And now we're seeing the physical and consequences of that. I think Dr. Fauci needs to be put under investigation. And whether that investigation leads to jail time remains to be seen. Adam Schiff blatantly lied. He lied to Congress. He said that he had, proof of Trump colluding with the Russians, and he purposely peddled this narrative to the mainstream media and the American public, and created an enormous divide in this country on purpose. And it borderlines treason, if you ask me. Comey is another. Comey goes all the way back to the Southern District of New York. His daughter is actually one of the chief prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. And we know where, what type of operation the Southern District of New York, the law for the lawyers there are highly politicized. They're the ones that, entrapped Trump, if you will, created laws out of nothing, created charges out of nothing. So, this whole cabal needs to be investigated, and I really hope this is where Kash Patel, as well as Pam Bondi, steps up and starts holding those people who just purposely destroyed the fabric of our country. I hope they hold them accountable.
Wow. All right, let me shift your gears just a little bit. You probably watched the speech. We all did. It was really pretty amazing. I guess what's so amazing was the childlike behavior of the Democrats in the room. By the way, the two ladies that got up and walked out in the middle of his speech were representatives from Oregon. I'm not proud to say.
Shocker.
But the point being is, just trying to be objective here, but it looks like the Democrats are literally bankrupt. They have no message. They have no messenger. The only thing they have is Trump's a jerk.
Right. And Elon steals. Actually, they were stealing. So this was, excuse me, this was a display of like the last breaths of Democrat power. You know, the only power they have now, because their power has been stripped. It has not only been stripped politically by the Trump administration, but the money going into the coffers of the Democratic Party. And now we just learned that Act Blue is basically not only under investigation, but every single person at Act Blue is leaving. And one of the top lawyers, like 7 executives in Act Blue have left just in the last week. And the lawyer for Act Blue was just basically locked out of the office. And Act Blue is one of the largest, if you ask me, money laundering operations for the Democratic Party. It's taken in tens of billions of dollars just over the last decade, specifically for I'm gonna sneeze, specifically for Democrats. So I think what we're seeing now is, like you said, not only childlike behavior, but they don't have a message, they don't have money, and they don't have a bench. They don't have a leader.
Right.
Who is the Democratic leader right now?
Yeah. All right. I'm going to hold up a paddle that says, sneeze, Megan.
I'm fighting this cold that's going around like crazy.
So I'm going to hold up a paddle that says, go, Megan. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Perfect.
Right? Megan Barth's back with us, and I wish I had a paddle that says, go, Megan. I'm going to get one, Megan. I'm going to get a paddle, and when I have you on, I'm going to hold it up.
I love it.
Hey, the president wants to do away with the Department of Education. I did not know until I did a little bit of research on this that the Department of Education, when it came into being, it was under the executive branch. But that doesn't preclude the president from having total power to wipe it out. I guess it has to get approved by Congress. I don't know the protocols here, but the bottom line is it looks like it's going to go away, either at once or little by little. I don't hear anybody crying over this other than the teachers union.
Well, of course, again, when you strip the Democrats of their power, they react in a hysterical, normally violent manner. The teachers union is simply there not for the children. It's there to protect the administrative state, which is a large portion of education. You know, what are they really fighting for? Low test scores? Our average 4th grader or average 8th grader, even our average senior that's graduating from high school is illiterate. They can't read and they can't write. And as a matter of fact, there is a student from the East Coast who's suing her school district because she graduated with honors and she can't read or write. And I've always asked, I said, how can you have a 20% literacy rate and a 90% graduation rate? How does that make sense? I mean, I'm no math major, okay, but it doesn't make sense to the average person. And so I'm so happy that, Donald Trump has taken this promise made by Reagan back in the 80s.
Right.
And he's actually fulfilling that promise now 40 plus years later. Thank God, because something different needs to be done. We used to have higher test scores before this bureaucratic nightmare called the Department of Education, where education was localized. And so, Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, pretty much said on record after she was confirmed that her job is to close it. And I'm looking forward to that day, and I'm looking forward to the day where the teachers' unions no longer have parents and children held hostage by their political whims and their political power.
Well, this would be a huge rock in the windshield of the union, and we'll see what happens. Let me move your attention over to the display that we watched on television the other day where the sanctuary city mayors came in and tried to defend themselves. It was stunning to watch. They can't answer the question, and they refuse to. Do you know if ICE, feds, can go into a sanctuary city state and take control?
You know, that's a great question, and it was actually a question that my dad and I were talking about yesterday, because the illegal Guatemalan or Venezuelan, whatever he is, he's illegal. The one that set the poor woman on fire in New York, I believe it was, and then watched her burn alive. The state of New York will not turn him over to ICE for deportation. They refuse. So that was our question. Well, I'm thinking that perhaps there's state charges against him, and so the state, of course, wants to make him a ward of the state, right? They recognize him as a legal citizen, even though he's not, because of their sanctuary policies. And I believe Tom Homan last night said something to the effect that we're basically just waiting on Pam Bondi to do something. And so that signaled to me that they're going to have to bring federal charges against this illegal criminal alien in order to deport him. Nonetheless, you know, I honestly don't know the answer to your question, because look, we know where the illegal aliens are, primarily in New York, and it's at the taxpayer-funded hotel, where you have hundreds, if not thousands, in that immediate area. So my question was always like, go there. We know where they are. They're standing outside, right? But they're not. And so then that tells me that there is something impeding ICE efforts to go into those specific sanctuary city communities and start removing en masse illegal criminals. Which brings me to a second point. You know, we were promised mass deportation, and I'm still kind of waiting for that mass deportation. Anyone that crossed our border illegally is a criminal. We should not have to wait around for the criminal to commit, the illegal alien rather, to commit a violent act in order to have them removed from our country. Now, you're going to have people that will say, yes, but what about our economy? Well, my response to that is that, well, we have basically a condoned slave economy, where we are paying substandard wages for slave labor. And we no longer have to be that country. We never should have been that country. We are a magnet for this type of migration, and that needs to stop.
I think part of that is as long as you have sanctuary cities, and in our case, sanctuary state, we're the oldest sanctuary state in the Union, that these people will gravitate there as a means of sanctuary. And it's a matter of time the citizens will implode and leave because they can't handle it. So the cities are going to paint themselves right into a corner, if not a state.
Well, and that's what you see in California. You know, California is a perfect example of that. You have a mass exodus from California, people fleeing California, whether it's residents or businesses, because the taxes now have gotten so high, and they are punishing the hardworking legal citizens of that state in order to pay for the free healthcare and the free education and the free legal representation and the free food and, you know, the free government money that all of these illegal aliens are getting. There was just a story the other day where illegal aliens are getting, you know, some upwards towards $7,000 a month in government aid. For breaking the law, they're making nearly $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Where the average teacher's salary is, you know, $40,000.
No, I think the covers are off. We're going to see more and more exposure of the nonsense and the corruption, and quite frankly, the scheme underneath the surface of everything that benefited people. That goes back to a question I asked you earlier. It's just a matter of time, I think, that we'll have to trace back to the kickbacks. There's another story that broke this morning. It was really interesting to me. Sangler, who was one of the co-founders of Wikipedia, screamed and hollered about what's going on over there. So he's decided we should ask Musk to come in and investigate government influence in Wikipedia, if not foreign influence into Wikipedia. Wikipedia now is under the spotlight. What do you think?
Well, sure. Wikipedia is supposed to be kind of like the, new Encyclopedia Britannica that's online. But the difference is that you don't just have one publisher, you have multiple publishers that come in and basically, edit and add to definitions and historical context and all of that. And so, what better way to influence the American people than through perhaps a resource like Wikipedia? We already know that the government had embedded itself into an entire censorship network and created a censorship network under the Biden administration and the Obama administration that influenced the news, for example, that influenced the narrative during COVID. When I first launched the Nevada Globe 3 years ago, within 6 days, I had some company called NewsGuard breathing down my throat, challenging me and questioning me, and how dare I report on XYZ? And I'm thinking, who the hell is NewsGuard, and who appointed them the guardian of the news?
Yeah.
Well, then you look back at NewsGuard, and they have Pentagon ties, and they're former Obama administration officials that are former, or hedge fund managers, and they were billion-dollar bundlers for Obama. And so, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, communists have infiltrated every single level of our government, okay? And that is a fact, Jack. I no longer call them Democrats. I haven't called them Democrats for over a decade. They are communists and they are Marxists. And, what is the modus operandi for the extreme left, as they call us, the extreme right? The modus operandi is to control the citizenry, and how better to control the citizenry through the control of information.
Right.
That is propaganda, and that's what we're seeing.
One other question. What's your take on what happened in the Oval Office with President Zelensky and where they are now? Is they're all heading to Saudi Arabia with the invitation of the Crown Prince on Monday to talk?
Yeah, that guy's ego is twice the size of his height. I mean, I have never seen, he's got Napoleon complex like I have never seen. And I thought, how dare you? And I think that was pretty much the response of the greater population here as we watched that unfold. And good for President Trump and good for J.D. Vance, Vice President Vance, for basically taking him to the mat. I love that they kicked him out, even before lunch. Get out. But now what we see is Zelensky all of a sudden clawing his way back, and he's ready to sign the deal. And this is the art of the deal. This is tough negotiations, and it's refreshing to see someone with a backbone in our White House for a change.
Do you think the deal in Saudi Arabia will include the mineral deal, or is this just going to be the beginning of peace talks with Putin?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it could be twofold. We have a lot going on, obviously, and especially to clean up in Gaza, and there's already been some UAE partners that said that they were going to commit $53 billion into rebuilding Gaza when they said they had no interest at first. What I think the larger international community, specifically with the influence of Trump now in the most powerful office in the world, is looking towards peace and not chaos.
Well, you and I will hook up soon after that, and I'll change the paddle reading. And we'll see how this turns out, because that's going to happen on Monday, and this is going to be interesting. Hey, good to see you. I hope you feel a little bit better. And stay in the fight. We need you. Thank you.
Trying. Thank you so much, Perry. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.